this is Clayton with Thoughts from Sunrise. Just want to capture a quick little talk here. Nothing is fleshed out. These are ideas that I'm working with, things that I'm noticing as they come up throughout the day. I've been working very deeply for a while about healing childhood trauma, forgiveness, um, studying personality disorders, and learning about all these things that affect myself. Most of this is just a deep dive into myself, understanding my life and my world, and then those around me, and how to be a better person. And so some of the stuff I've been dealing with recently was narcissism, codependency, understanding, from my own childhood, things that have informed and shaped me and my physical structure, my brain, and so forth, and how I relate with the people in my life, and how to heal these things where they just don't seem to work out, and the problems that I know that are subtly, um, you know, I'm carrying forward. And so learning how to work with this. And then I look at life in a bigger picture too, because like right now the world's at war in many different areas, not just Russia and Ukraine, but throughout the globe there's many different things going on, a lot of complexities. We've got our political division, and we've got our social and class divisions, and there's so much happening all at once. And I started to make these connections earlier today while I was working, and looking at these personality structures of narcissism and codependency, and how they cause the brain to develop or underdevelop in certain ways. And so it's like when we're young, age 0 to 7, we know now. Well, not that we know now. It's we've always known this, or some people have always known this. That 0 to 7 is the time when the brain is getting developed, and basically the dendrites are getting wired and the structure is being built. And really what's happening is that's our operating system, our defensive mechanism in how to survive in the world. And really this is where our personality gets formed and developed. And our personality is sort of our false self. It's not our real self. Um, I know in the Bible there was this talker in the church. I'm sorry, just the church. In the old days they used to say, "Show me your child at 7, and I'll show you the man," because they knew that at time you reach 7 years old, your operating system was set, and this is old wisdom. And now, scientifically, we're showing this through, I forget the name of the science that's doing it, but Bruce Lipton has a huge body of work on this, and other scientists as well, where they show this biologically, how this works. So in that early childhood, if the nurturing isn't correct, or if we have trauma, a lot of people are either, abused, raped, hit, neglected. Like there's so much trauma that can occur in childhood, let alone being born itself, or stress. Dr. Gabor Mate shows how just stress, we don't even have to be abused, but just the stress of the parents that have, the father's got to go to work, the mother's got to go to work, and so that child is left. Even leaving your child in the hospital, like when they get taken away from you, that separation can cause lasting imprints that go into their adulthood. So there's all different forms of trauma that a child can endure that is not strictly related to abuse, as we typically understand abuse. All of these things shape the brain, and which is how we identify in the body. This is like my body, my brain structure, and everything. And so this is how the tools that I get to use to relate with the world, for the most part. And so that development of the brain in when there's more severe trauma, it affects the development. And so this is one process that we're not going through right now, is emotional regulation, recognizing my emotions. It affects your perception. If you are in a defensive posture in your perception based on childhood trauma, that becomes your operating system. Is most of the things that we do in the world are unconscious. They're in a way to get needs met, even though the it's not necessary anymore. But that has not been nurtured out of the child. So, if a child is abused or neglected, it develops this need to be loved, the need to be, fed, and the need to have its basic needs met. And if that is not nurtured out of the programming in its stage of individuation, while it's going through this childhood growth, it becomes part of its rigid personality structure that over time it identifies with, becomes pathological, because it can't see the nuance of personality versus reality. And that's one of the things that popped up into my head today, because I was reading some news stuff, And it all of a sudden started to dawn on me, because I remember maybe 10 years ago, maybe a little bit more, there started to be this phenomena of this clickbait stuff. And this is with the uprise of the internet. But this clickbait in order to get views. And so it's basically misleading headlines in order to get you to click onto an article to go and read so they can make money, um, which is, God, it's just a scourge to journalism, and just like this focus on making money. It's it's a lack of trust and a lot of stuff. But what happened is, I think over time we've developed this sort of dichotomous way of thinking, because now if you just read the headlines, you don't actually read into the article, you'll see that these things are geared towards dichotomous thinking, and that makes the clickbait. So it's and then so it's like an all good or all bad. And you'll notice this, how this translates into the political sphere. How in the past we used to be able to have good debate. I remember CNN had a program called Crossfire, and they would have like a Republican and a Democrat sitting across the table, and they would talk about their opposing views in a healthy debate. And the moderator's there, and they could talk, and it was fine. And then eventually that went away, and now it's all, one media station is all liberal, another media station is all Republican. They try to balance it out by putting a scapegoat in the mix there with them to make it appear balanced, but it's not. And that's kind of a reflection of where we're at societally, where we're having this all or nothing thinking with no nuance. And this is, let's say, dichotomous thinking and authoritarianism is showing that, according to this research, dichotomous thinking is common in narcissistic people with low self-esteem. Let's see here, what else does it say? And let's see, get out of this, I gotta close. And so this is like a personality. Let's see, this is a long article, I won't read through that. Anyways, we have this dichotomous thinking because when we're informed by childhood that we're not good enough, and usually this can be because we're told we're not good enough, or because someone's not there. Let's say our parents aren't around. They're not there to show you, or they're not emotionally there, or psychologically there to tell you, you're loved, you're supported, you're valuable, you're beautiful, like all those things. Those do not get programmed into the mind, and those are basic needs for survival. So you're okay. Like a helpless child who's just a blob needs to know that they're okay and they'll survive. And so when you don't hear those things, what we do is we start to twist our reality. And so we need to get the external feedback. So it's like the external locus of control. We have internal, like a healthy person develops an internal locus of control. They know fundamentally that they're okay. They know that they're good. They are inside of themselves, have a feeling of comfort because it's been instilled with them. They've been nurtured properly. They've been individuated properly when, between 18 months and 2 years, where they start to create that object differentiation between self and mother, to where there's that separation. They go through the hard pains before they're consciously aware of it. And so that's the pain of the separation, but also the realization of that difference. And then it wires the brain and becomes part of its, the healthy mindset. And I think in our society, what we've sort of tended to lean towards over the decades is sort of an unhealthy balance, to where there's not good object identification, there's not good individuation. And so the child doesn't grow up with the healthy internal locus of control, and so we're basing our okayness on the external world, which causes us to want to manipulate the world in order to say, like, we're okay. And so how we do that sometimes, and a narcissist is good at this, is they'll manipulate a story in a subtle way to get you to agree with them, in order so that they know that they're okay. And so they're, the typical narcissist always has the son always, it's like all focus on them. They create a story that is makes them appear to be better than average, which comes from the shame, either from trauma. Let's say, a lot of times, say the child is raped, which happens, quite often, unfortunately, and that will create a deep shame in the child, and a child that has no way of protecting itself and defending itself. and relating with this type of situation. And so it grows up with this deep shame that then it can't face. And so it projects out the opposite, which is pride, or shame of, let's say, your living conditions and your, let's say you grow up poor, and or not even poor, just whatever, because you can grow up with shame in a wealthy environment too. But somehow, if you were shamed and not have been able to let that go, which would be a lack of proper nurturing, then cover this up, and you go into pride, and pride is not life sustaining. It is a low level of relating with the world because it's a protection mechanism. Unfortunately, it's a very difficult one because pride doesn't see itself as flawed, or not as flawed, because I don't think ultimately we're not flawed. But pride, when the consciousness is stuck in pride, it doesn't see that it needs to do anything, and also it has the external locus of control constantly getting feedback through manipulation. So it's it's okay as it is, and secretly it knows that deep down there's that pain it's got to face, and so it doesn't want to do that at all costs. So I've been noticing that we, in our society, especially in the United States, and this narcissism is extremely damaging and toxic. So I can see how the United States has this proclivity for narcissism, and then it does have this toxicity that spreads throughout the world. So we have our cultures and values spreading, positive and negative, because the narcissist is also an extremely wonderful person when they're healthy. It's like the number 2 on the Enneagram, or it's like the Enneagram numbers, how you have the enlightened and the neurotic aspects of all of them. So whatever your personality style is, you have all the good qualities and the bad qualities, and this is what dichotomous thinking can't handle, is that we have both. We have good and bad qualities, and they exist within us all at once. And so that's what I was noticing with the headlines, is they have this tendency to have a all or nothing thinking, like, and a reaction too. Like when you go through the comments, it's like, what happened today or recently, Elon Musk going for Twitter, buying a 9% or more stake in Twitter, trying to do a hostile takeover. And there's people that like him and people that don't. And the people that don't like him think that this is an evil man, and a billionaire trying to take over, just like all the other billionaires, like Bezos and so forth. Everyone that's evil, that doesn't align with their way of thinking. So everything he does is from an egotistical, maniacal perspective. And then when people that support him, appreciate the things that he's done to develop all these great businesses that have employed a lot of people, and have expanded technology, and his claim is for free speech, and so he's going to open it up. And so it's like what we tend to do is have this dichotomous thinking where if I don't like him, everything he does is bad, and it's colored by that lens. If I like him, then it's all like the negative things that they do might get brushed under the under the bridge, or brushed under the carpet, so we don't have to acknowledge it. And when we come into a healthy mindset, we can acknowledge, some of these things are possibly good, and some of them are possibly non-productive or negative, and we can take a look at that and have an honest debate. And I think that's one of the things that's missing, is the honest debate, is being able to say hey, these are positive qualities, there's negative ones, this is where I stand. And I what was the talk today? There was so there's this idea. There was an old I think it's old Jewish, from the Talmud, I think, this old tradition, maybe it wasn't the Talmud, I could be misspeaking on that, but there's this old tradition where two men would get together and they would say, this is how I see reality. And the other one would say, this is how I see reality. And then you can have an honest talk about these different things, because we understand I understand where you're coming from, you understand where I'm coming from, and now we can talk about it and maybe find some common ground, as opposed to my reality is the right way, and my reality is the only way. And all of a sudden, if you have two people with differing points of view, differing perspectives, and each one is the right one, well, you have no ground to work from. So we may as well go to war. And this happens a lot in relationships. I know that I've experienced this where it's just, um, when you want to share your perspective on something, and if the other person isn't able to accept that you have a different perspective, it doesn't matter about being right or wrong. It's just a stage of development, and I'm really starting to understand this more. That um, depending on how the brain is formed, like there's unless you do really difficult work of introspection and doing the work to work with your emotions and your mindset and everything, and open up this perspective that there's nuance to life. It's very difficult to get beyond certain challenges within relationships. So this is just an idea that I'm fleshing out. It came up today. I wanted to capture this. I want to share it. You can give feedback if you want, if you get through this whole thing and listen to it. But it's really interesting, and I think that these are things that we need to look at and understand. Instead of reacting to the world, instead of reacting to headlines, instead of reacting to our relationships where we get roadblocked. And I say this for myself too, because I've got caught in these messes where it's just like unable to continue a conversation. And this is one thing that I'm working on developing in myself, is opening up more to have the strength and the courage to open up more to dialogue, so that way we can come together instead of having to separate or have these differing point of views where we never come to. And it's not about coming to agreement. It's coming to understanding. And with understanding, we don't need to agree, but I can still respect you. I can still love you. I can still care for you. And you can do the same for me, as long as we understand each other. And then it's okay. And then it doesn't matter if you agree or don't agree. It's just you can appreciate that there's multiple points of view for any given situation. So that's all I wanted to capture right now. This is something I think is a really important topic that I want to flesh out some more. So hopefully this is helpful and not too rambly. This is something that just came up and I'm working with. So hopefully I'll flesh that out for you, or I'll flesh it out for me too, because I think this is really good. And hope you have a great rest of your day or evening or wherever you find yourself. Take care.